Don't worry. Okay, so what basically, and it went over to the next slide, today's agenda.
Yes, ma'am. We're at
Okay.
today's agenda. Yes, ma'am.
Well, we're going to go over basically it's a type of financial aid available, a quick FAFSA overview, how to calculate your aid, cost comparisons, resources, and then I'm going to open it up for any questions and answers. So, the first thing that I do want to get everyone to understand is what the actual goals of the financial aid office is. We have this pot of money essentially that we want to give to our families, but we want to evaluate everybody's cost. And the way that we're doing that is going through their FAFSA, going through the student's financial need, and making sure that we're providing a balance of gift aid and self aid to the students. Because what our goal is to get you graduated from college with as least debt as possible. Now, there's a couple of different forms of financial aid that is available to you. There's grants, scholarships, work study, and federal loans. And we're going to go through each one so you get an understanding of what they are. The first one, which I feel is the best type of financial aid, are grants. Grants are free money that you do not have to pay back. You can use it for tuition and you will be able to use it on the financial aid in order to pay for college expenses. Usually, though, grants are need based. So you will need to complete a FAFSA, which we will go over later on, and you will have to qualify for the grants. But I will go over some different types with you. The federal Pell Grant is the biggest grant that is offered from the federal government. Um, it is usually about 6,400, $6,500 per year if you get the full amount. And what you can do with this grant is pay for any bill that you have for college, and you can put that money towards that, and you do not have to pay it back. The next grant is the Federal Supplemental Opportunity Grant. This grant is special because, unlike the Pell Grant is the same criteria for no matter what institution that you choose to go to. However, the Federal Supplemental Opportunity Grant, it's the school gets a certain amount of money and they're able to divide it to the students how they wish. For an example, at the University of Cincinnati, we it's a first come first serve type of grant, meaning that if you fill out your FAFSA early enough, you can get additional money. For an example, last year, anybody who filled out their FAFSA October 1st to November 3rd, they were able to receive an additional $1,200 from the University of Cincinnati. And we ran out of that money November 3rd. So anyone who filled out their FAFSA afterwards, even if they qualified for a Pell Grant, did not receive that. That's why we always want to make sure that our families know to complete your FAFSA as early as possible so you don't miss out on any free money. The Teach Grant, if anybody is going into education, there is a grant that you can use, but this one is not need based, so it's not going to go by your income, but you do have to have a 3.25 GPA and accepted into an education major. However, if you do not complete a service agreement with this grant, it can turn into a loan. That's why with this grant, the college that you go to, we will do a lot of counseling before you accept the grant to make sure you understand what you are signing up for. Then the last type of grant that usually is given is an Ohio College Opportunity Grant. This grant is unique because they want Ohio residents to go to Ohio institutions. So if you graduated from an Ohio high school and you want to go to an Ohio or select Pennsylvania institutions, you can get an additional grant as well. The next thing that we want to talk about is federal work study. So federal work study is where it's a financial aid award. However, you have to do a little bit more. They don't just give it to you. So it will be an award on your award letter. but it is an actual job on campus. And on the FAFSA, there is a question stating, do you wish to participate in federal work study? I always tell my students to say yes, because even if you don't want to do it at a later time, at least you have that option. If you say no, you will not have that option to have federal work study during that academic year. The great thing about work study is that, let's say you do want a part-time job, and it's again, the federal work study, you're working on campus somewhere, and our main goal is school and for you to complete your education. But let's say you want a part-time job and you go to Chipotle. They're going to base your hours of work on their needs. The federal work study position is going to base your hours of work on your needs, and they're going to go work around you and what's important to you as the student. And employers, they just don't want that you have that degree. They want some experience. So this works great on a resume as well. So the next thing that we're going to talk about are scholarships. There are two types of scholarships: institutional, which is through the university that you choose, or private scholarships, which is any other scholarship. There's merit based, talent based. A lot of institutions now are not requiring ACT and SAT scores for admissions. However, financial aid, we still say we feel like you should complete those tests, because there are some scholarships that you might need those test scores first. Every single college has their own criteria. There's different kinds. So make sure when you're looking at the colleges that you're going to possibly attend, that you're looking at the criteria, the deadlines, and when you are filling out the college scholarships. I look at college scholarships all the time, and I see the same thing: GPA, high school, ACT, SAT scores. But I'm looking for something a little bit different. I'm looking for some extra. I want to know, did you go to school all day and then have to come home and fix dinner for your brother or sister, or watch your brother or sister? Did you go to school and participate in an extracurricular activity or a sport? Have community involvement? Did you volunteer at your church? I mean, the scholarship essays are your time to shine. So make sure they're unique and you stand out. I just want to give you a little bit of UC scholarship information just to show you the differences in the scholarships. We have our biggest scholarship is the Cincinnati scholarship, that it ranged from $1,500 annually to full tuition, but you need to have a completed admissions application by December 1st. And that's coming up. And it's not just UC that has that December 1st deadline. Many colleges have that same deadline. So if you're a senior this year, you should be looking at the college and applying now as quickly as possible. I love to say, go outside of the university. Please do not um, dwell or think that um, if you apply to a college, they're going to fund your education. That does not happen most of the time. So think outside the box. I love fastweb.com. And the reason I do is that I didn't really believe in it at first, but my son graduated with a 2.7 GPA. He hated writing essays. So we found him a scholarship on fastweb.com, where all he had to do was prove that he was over 6'5", and he got $500 a semester to go to Shawnee State for books, and that helped me out tremendously. There are scholarships out there for left-handed individuals, asparagus farmers. If you have an asparagus farm right now, they're giving you $10,000. A girl came into our office with a scholarship on how much she liked Dr. Pepper. So they're out there. This money goes by the wayside every year because people just don't apply. So just do a simple Google search, and you never know what might happen. These are just another example of some scholarships that we offer. And this PowerPoint will be available to anyone. I can send it to you, but I'm just showing you the differences in the scholarships. Our scholarship had a hard deadline, December 1st. There wasn't a GPA requirement. The first one, the John C. Lincoln Memorial Scholarship, has a 2.5 GPA requirement. The second one has a 2.0. So there's different requirements for every scholarship. So you want to make sure that you're looking at everything so that you do not miss a requirement or a deadline. So the next thing I'm going to go into is federal loans. Now, even though we don't want the students to go into debt, sometimes in order to pay for their education, it's necessary. And we want to make sure that you're aware of your options. All federal student loans have a fixed interest rate. There are two student loans that can be in the student's name without a credit check. They just need to fill out the FAFSA. The best one is going to be the subsidized loan, where there's no interest, no payments as long as the student is enrolled part time. And then there's the unsubsidized loan, where there's no payments required, but interest does accrue. So as long as the student is enrolled part time, they can receive that loan and there will not be payments required. Now, the parent can have a Parent Plus loan. They can apply for that. Unfortunately, there is a slight credit check with the Parent Plus loan. The repayment begins 60 days after the loan is dispersed, or you can opt into having no payments while your student is in school. The first two loans in the student's name can be never be transferred out of the student's name. The Parent Plus loan can never be transferred out of the parent's name. There are some federal loan interest rates and fees that goes along with taking out a loan. They will charge for students a 3.73%. That is the interest rate right now. For the Parent Plus loan, it's at 6.28%. They do charge an origination fee when you take out the loan. So for undergraduate students, it's 1.057%. So that means if it's a $1,000 loan, the student will get $990 put on their account, and the government takes a $10 fee. Now, I do want to have you understand that there are limits to the loans. So it's not just that the student will be able to borrow however much they need to pay their balance. There are limits. If your student is a typical dependent student, which we will go over what is dependent and independent in the FAFSA portion, then if they're a freshman student, they can only get a total of 5,500 per year. So that's 5,500 whether the school costs $6,000 per year or whether the school costs $20,000 per year. It's the same amount. They get a little bit of an increase when they're a sophomore, junior, senior, and you can see at the bottom if they go to graduate school, there's a big bump of $20,500. The independent students who do not need their parents' information to fill out the FAFSA, they can get a little bit more. So now we're going to go into how do we actually receive financial aid. So in order to receive federal financial aid, you have to have a high school diploma, GED, or complete your education in a homeschool approved setting, be enrolled or accepted in an eligible degree or certificate program, a U.S. citizen or eligible non-citizen, have a valid social security number, and if you are seniors, you will complete your 2022-2023 FAFSA. The free application for federal student aid is your application for financial aid that we recommend that you complete every year. You never have to complete the FAFSA, but it is free. Make sure you are going to studentaid.gov and not like FAFSA.com. Do not pay to submit the FAFSA. It opens up October 1st of every year, and you're going to need to submit it every year. Your freshman year, sophomore, senior, every single year, the FAFSA has to be submitted. We recommend you do it as early as possible because, again, there's that first come, first serve basis. And you have to make sure that you're looking at deadlines. At UC, we do not have a FAFSA deadline, but there are other schools that might have that deadline. So make sure you're looking on their websites so you don't miss out on opportunities. In order to complete your FAFSA, when I went to school 20 something years ago, we used to have a 4-digit PIN number. Now they want you to have a user ID and password, which they will prompt you. You will have to create your user ID, create your password. The student needs a user ID and password, and the parent needs their own user ID and password. A couple of things about this that I want to make sure that you're aware is when you are creating the FSA ID, do not use your high school email address because more than likely it won't be there after a couple months after you graduate. Make sure you're using an email address that you'll have access to because this FSA ID follows you through your whole collegiate career. A couple of things that are important is make sure your information is correct name, social, date of birth. Because if this information is sent to the Social Security Administration to verify you are who you say you are, one digit of your social transpose, your date of birth, even your name can hinder your financial aid from being processed. So make sure that you are inputting that information correctly. So some of the things that you need to process the 2022-2023 FAFSA are we're going to need students' demographic information, and if the student filed a 2020 tax return, we'll need that. Parent demographic information and parents' 2020 tax return. So make sure you're aware we don't need 2021, we need the prior year 2020. There's a couple of different ways that you can complete the FAFSA. You can do it on the desktop, which I recommend, paper, which I do not recommend because it can take 10 to 12 weeks to process. There is a app that you can do it on your phone now. So there's very different ways that you can complete that FAFSA. So this is what it looks like on an iPhone. I know it's a very old iPhone, but this is what the student aid app will look like. This is what it looks like on the web. And there's a couple of different things that I do want to make sure that you don't avoid when you are filling out the FAFSA. Make sure you're doing the correct years. Seniors will do 2022, 2023. If you are a junior, you're not on the FAFSA list yet. You won't be until October 1st of next year. Make sure you're using the legal name. And I want to stress that because we have a lot of students who cannot receive their aid on time because they're using, let's say their name is Joseph and they use Joe. And the FAFSA is that picky where sometimes when it comes to the college, they won't be able to process the aid. Make sure everything is correct. You're using all of the correct information and make sure you're reporting your correct household number and how many people are in college because that your financial aid could change depending on those numbers. If you are a DACA and or an undocumented student, they're not eligible for financial aid. However, if you have a DACA status, you still can fill out the FAFSA. There are some colleges who will still give you financial aid. It's just a different type. For an example, at the University of Cincinnati, we will give a DACA student the amount that they would have gotten Pell. So we will give that to you as a scholarship. So if you would have got $5,000 in Pell, we'll give you a $5,000 scholarship. There, uh, at this time for undocumented students, there's not a way to actually fill out the FAFSA and get federal aid, but there are other means of scholarships that we have to offer in other schools that they have scholarships and other grants through the school that you can apply for. If parents are undocumented and they do not have social security numbers, then you can still complete the FAFSA. You just won't be able to send it electronically. You will have to print off the FAFSA, sign it, and mail it in. So it just takes a little bit more time in this case. But if your parent citizenship does not affect your ability. So if you're a citizen but your parents are not, you can still receive financial aid. So the next slide that we're going to go over is FAFSA dependency questions. So what we're going to say now is um, the biggest questions that we receive in the financial aid office, and this is number one, is how am I supposed to know if I'm an independent or dependent student? So you will be independent if you answer yes to one of the following questions. 24 years old, married, if you have dependents. If you answer yes to one of these questions, you are considered independent. You do not have to provide parent information on the FAFSA. If you answer no to every single one of these questions, you are dependent, meaning you will have to provide your parent information on the FAFSA. So there are some special circumstances that you can have your dependency contested if both parents are incarcerated, if the student left home for an abusive environment, the student is estranged from their parents, or the student does not know where the parents are or unable to contact them, then we can do a dependency appeal for that. But it's not a special circumstance if the student just does not live with their parents, or the parents do not provide financial support, or the parents refuse to put their information on the FAFSA, or even if the student does file taxes and they claim independent on their taxes, that is not considered independent for the FAFSA. So you just have to make sure that you understand the difference between those two. The next question that we receive a lot of is, what parent do I choose to actually put on the FAFSA? So we're going to try to break it down. If both parents are married, they're biological parents, we're going to need both of their information on the FAFSA. If both the parents are not married, but they live together, we're going to need both of their information, their financial information on the FAFSA. If your parents are divorced or they were never married and not living together, the FAFSA parent is going to be the one that the student lived with the most during the past 12 months. So if it was 50-50, you're going to have a conversation with your family and decide who actually gave that 51% of support to that student. And that's the parent you're going to put on the FAFSA. Now we're going to go down a little bit more in the rabbit hole. So, if the parent who provided 51% is now remarried, we're not only going to need that parent's information, but step parent's information as well. So, just make sure that you understand which parent is going to be on the FAFSA. Now, since this is one of the most difficult questions on the FAFSA, there's a little question mark by each question, so it'll give you a little bit more detail on what you will have to do for that particular question. Now, adoptive parents are considered legal parents, so they will have to fill out the parent section of the FAFSA. Foster parents are not considered legal parents, so you will not have to fill that part out if you are a foster parent. So investments on the FAFSA asks for a lot of information. Not only do they want your demographic information, your 2020 tax, they want to know if you have any investments. They're going to ask you for what is the amount in your checking and savings accounts. When you are putting this information, do not put the actual amount in your checking and savings accounts. They want to know, what do you have left over after you paid all your bills? What have you actually saved for college? So this amount could be a determining factor into the financial aid. So you want to make sure that you're not putting like the whole amount in your account. They want to know about investments. Now, real estate investments, they do not mean the value of your home. They're meaning rental property, things that you receive money for. Trust funds, UGMA, UTMA accounts. They're looking at money market funds, mutual funds, CDs, stocks, stock options, bonds, and other securities. So if you have any of that, that's what they're meaning for investments. So just make sure you do not put the value of your home, your life insurance policy, pension funds, you know, cash or savings that have already been reported on your taxes. And if you are not the owner of the UGMA, UTMA accounts, you're just a custodian, don't put that on your FAFSA as well. So you want to make sure that that's one of the things. And if you have a family farm that you live on, do not include that in your investments. 529 plans, this is kind of in the same realm. If you're just a beneficiary, if your student's just a beneficiary, we don't need to include that on the FAFSA, only if the parent or the student is the account owner. So let's say the grandparent has a 529 plan and they want to give it to the student, you do not have to put that on the FAFSA. Just make sure that you're aware of that. Now I'm going to go into special circumstances. If you remember, I said earlier in the presentation that they need your 2020 tax information. Anything could have happened from 2020 to now, especially with COVID-19. So there could have been a loss of employment, loss of hours at the employment, divorce, marriage, extra child could have been into the family. If anything happened from then to now, there is a way that the financial aid office at whatever institution that you will go to can evaluate your circumstances manually. And I'll just give you an example. The University of Cincinnati, we have 46,000 students. We have 4 advisors. So there's no way we process the financial aid. We have a computer system that will process the financial aid for the students. So, a special circumstance, if you fill this out, a live advisor will take a look at it and say, okay, tell me what happened in your life. Let me see if I can get you some more financial aid. So, just be aware that you will put 2020 information on your FAFSA, but you can get it appealed. Another thing on the FAFSA is the IRS data retrieval tool. I would say it will take you about 45 minutes to an hour the first time you ever completed a FAFSA. That is because you are transferring the information from your taxes into the FAFSA. And they want a lot of different lines from the taxes. The IRS data retrieval tool will transfer that information for you and cut down on your FAFSA time about 20 to 30 minutes. What this does is they would verify with your social date of birth, address that you filed your 2020 taxes with, and everything is correct. It will just transfer everything over for you. And that's great because you want to make sure that all of your information is accurate. So after you get all of this information into your FAFSA, it's going to come up with a confirmation page. This confirmation page is going to include your expected family contribution, which we're going to go over in the next slide. They're going to show you how much in the Pell Grant and direct loan that you're going to receive. So it's going to give you this page immediately after you submit the FAFSA. So let's go over what actually is expected family contribution. It's going to be what the school uses as a measurement of how the student and the parents are available to pay for college. Because essentially, the the to pay for college does not fall on the university. It doesn't fall on the government. Unfortunately, it falls on the families. So we want to make sure that you understand that the EFC is not what you will actually pay for college, but it's going to give the institution, a ground start so we can be able to build your financial aid package. So after your FAFSA is complete, it goes to you can put up to 10 different schools of your choice on the FAFSA. It will go to those schools. And then this is how we determine your financial aid at the colleges. We take your direct cost. Your direct cost is what's actually going to be billed on your Bursar account, tuition fees, housing, meal plan. We add indirect costs because in high school, you don't have to pay for books. But in college, they can be $750 to $1,000 a year. So we're going to add in books, supplies, transportation, and it's going to equal this number called the cost of attendance. And you're going to see that at every college that your student is applying at. Cost of attendance is going to be the estimated cost for 1 year. That is not what you're going to pay. It's just the estimation that we use in the financial aid office to determine your financial aid package. So then we take that cost of attendance, we subtract that EFC number from your FAFSA, and that's going to equal your financial need. So that's kind of the backstory of how financial aid is processed. So now I kind of want to go into the sample cost. I want you to be aware of the different cost of college. A community college, let's say like Cincinnati State or UC Blue Ash, they're going to have tuition and fees at about $6,000. A public four-year university like the University of Cincinnati, our tuition and fees are about 12,000 a year. If you want to stay on campus, is another 12,500. So it can total about 25,000 per year if you stay on campus. If you go to a private four-year institution like Xavier, it's going to cost a little bit more, about $30,000 per year. Now, understand that these are Ohio in-state tuition costs. If you go out of the state of Ohio, you can be charged what's called a non-resident fee that is 7,000 to up to $20,000 per year in addition to the base tuition fees. So those are just some things to think about when you're looking at college. When you get your college acceptance letters in January, February, March, April is when every college is going to send out award letters. And you're going to get award letters from every school that you have been accepted to, and they're going to look different. They're going to show different things, but for the majority, they're going to show what your financial aid was awarded, what the estimated cost of attendance is, and how much you're expected to pay after financial aid. So, what I tell my students and parents to do is check the cost of attendance for every college, subtract how much financial aid you're going to receive, and then see if this is something that you can realistically afford. A great example I have is that I got a $40,000 scholarship to go to Xavier. I got a $6,000 scholarship to go to UC. I'm like, I don't want to wear red. I want to wear blue. I'm going to Xavier. But I did not investigate on how much Xavier actually costs. So that $40,000 scholarship only took care of 1 year. I ended up having to take out, $35,000, $40,000 in loans just to achieve a bachelor's degree because I did not investigate the cost. So more money doesn't actually mean a better financial decision. So a lot of people don't understand that financial aid and academics go hand in hand, and they do. The federal government kind of makes us police the financial aid. So you have to make sure that you are completing your classes that you're going to attend, and you're completing them with good grades. At UC, we expect a 2.0, but there's different, criteria, and that's about a C average. So if you do not complete satisfactory academic progress, your financial aid, your scholarships can be taken away. So you want to make sure that when you go to class and you're looking over your syllabus and make sure that it's something that you feel like you can complete. If you cannot get up at 8 in the morning, do not take 8 o'clock classes. Realistically, do what you can do. There's 5 o'clock classes. There's classes online. So make sure you understand that when you are looking at your college classes. Some tips that I do want to go over is a couple of things. Keep your loan debt to a minimum. And the reason I say that is because sometimes you can get more loans than you need to pay for your education. And then we will send that back to you in the form of a check. And you just don't want to waste that because you will have to pay these loans back and you will have to pay them back with interest. Make sure that you borrow less whenever you can and think outside the box. Maybe get a part time job over the summer to help pay for your books. Think about a money plan. I'm in my doctorate program right now, and one of my classes, they had a book for $450. And so I went online to textbooks.com and found it for $40. I rented the book and I don't have to pay that big amount. Think of things outside of the box. Another thing that we like to make sure that you understand is credit. After you graduate, that's one of the most important numbers is your credit score. These three little digits is going to tell people how credit worthy you are. It used to be that you did not need a credit score for jobs, just, apartments, cars, but now they're looking at that for jobs. Make sure you avoid credit card debt and only borrow what you need. Budget early. Make sure you understand how to create a budget, how to build a small emergency fund, learn how to invest. Every single college has free financial literacy, so make sure you take advantage of those programs. Once you get out of college and it's time to repay your student loans, they're going to give you a 6 month grace period after you graduate or drop below half time or leave school. And then they're going to start making you pay back the loans. They always put you on a standard repayment plan. So they take whatever your balance is, divide that by 10 years and divide that by 12 months so that you will have a minimum payment due every month. You can change that. You can opt to get an income-based repayment plan, but this is just a standard plan that they have you on. When I say do not borrow more than you need, I really mean that because if you default on student loans, it can hurt your credit score. It will be in your credit reports. They can take garnish wages. They can take your federal income tax um, refund. And they didn't used to be able to dip into SSI payments and unemployment, but they can now. They can take up to 30% of your payments. And if you have some type of licensing like a nursing or teaching license, they can take that as well. So you want to make sure that you don't let it get to that point. And all they want is a phone call if you are struggling. They can put you on a forbearance. They can stop payments for a certain amount of time. They just want to know what's happening in your life. So I just want to make sure that you understand that if you are a junior, start taking your ACT, SATs now so that you can have that out the way. You can even create your FSA ID this year. But you want to make sure that you're narrowing down colleges if you're a junior and maybe go over the summer and visit them. In the 12th grade, we need you to complete that FAFSA now. Make sure that you graduate because a lot of people, after they send in their transcripts, they forget there's a whole two more semesters after that, and it can affect scholarship eligibility. So make sure you're applying to colleges, you're making informed decisions about financial aid. A couple of things that I want you to consider is a university's price tag isn't the deciding factor. So even if you're receiving more aid, it doesn't equal that best option. You are paying for these classes, and even though college is where you want to find yourself, you kind of need to know an idea of what you want to do so you do not waste any money. I was pre law, pre med, and education until I decided finally on a major in Spanish. But it took me a while to get there, and I did have to pay for numerous classes that I didn't end up needing. Remember, they're all award letters will look different. We do not mail out award letters. Everything is sent by email. It's important to check your email daily to make sure nothing is coming from the university. There's indirect costs that are not shown on the student bill, like books and things of that matter. Remember about the special circumstance appeal if your household, anything changed with your finances from 2020. And again, I'm saying it again, remember to complete the FAFSA. So now I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. and open it up to any questions that anybody might have about the process. And I'm not sure if there was any questions put in the Q&A already.
No, there are no questions in the Q&A. I've been checking it.
Okay.
But I can start us off. I have, unless there are some parents or other staff members that have questions, but I wrote down a few. So one of my questions was, you had mentioned some scholarships on one of your slide, one of them being John C. Lincoln Scholarship.
Mhm.
Will you share with students and families, like, is that a separate application or is that something they can qualify for by completing their regular, just general application?
That is a great question. So, it is a separate application. It's an outside scholarship. Um, so the FAFSA is for federal aid only. The application to the college is for institutional aid, so only their scholarships. These are outside scholarships that you will have to apply for. And if I thought I put the link in there, but if I didn't, I can provide the link for those scholarships as well.
Okay. And the other question I wrote down is, trust is such an important word these days, and having trust in our institutions and our government. So what do you say to the family or to the parent that says, I'm nervous about putting my information into having the data retrieval tool get my information online?
Right.
What do you say to that?
That is another great question. Yes, we get that a lot. Parents are nervous about putting their information in, and even so nervous that someone else might take their information. If you go to the correct website, studentaid.gov, you're going to the correct FAFSA website. It is a secured site that the only people who are going to view your information are the financial aid advisors at the school that you put on your FAFSA. No one else is going to. It's a secured site through the IRS with your FSA ID. That's why we have created the FSA ID. If anybody has done their FAFSA before 2015, it used to be a four-digit PIN number, and we found that had some flaws, and we want to make sure that nothing happens with your information and that FSA ID holds true. We haven't had any issues that I'm aware of. We had a FAFSA update a couple of days ago, and we still haven't had any issues with anybody's information falling into the wrong hands. It's always a possibility, but for the most part, there's nothing wrong with completing that if you do the FSA ID. I hope that kind of answered it.
Hmm. Are there any other questions? Anybody else have something to add? Well, I can say a couple of things. I will say, you clarified a few questions that I was thinking about, sort of like how financial need is determined. That was
Hmm.
made very clear. In fact, probably one of the clearest descriptions I've heard of it. And that EFC code, you provided a good description about that. So if there are no questions, I'm all about starting on time, ending on time. So our stop time or our end time is officially at 7:30. We're at 7:18. This presentation is being recorded, so we will Jemiah. But the presentation is being recorded, so we will post this, and we will also we have who is in attendance, so we'll shoot out the PowerPoint or post the PowerPoint on our website, and also in the senior Google Classroom and the junior. Actually, all grade levels have a Google Classroom. We'll post it there as well. But Jemiah, go ahead and ask your question, my dear.
Um, you said it was a link on here. Where exactly is it?
Let me actually go through the PowerPoint and pull it up, see if I can put it. Okay, it is on here. On the I'm sorry, on the actual PowerPoint, the website that you can go to for information um, is right there. NEIDA at aws.org. And I'm not sure if I can post it. I think I can. Let me go ahead and put it in the chat. I'm also going to put my email in the chat. So if you have any questions, even if you're not going to the University of Cincinnati, just about the financial aid process, I'll be able to help you with that. And let me put the link for the John C. Lincoln Scholarship. All right, there you
Okay.
go.
Thank you very much. Jemiah, does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Miss Collier, you have a question. Go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, I have a junior, so the only thing right now that he can do is get a FSA ID and take the SAT, ACTs.
Right. Well, I can go into a little bit more about high school juniors. There is a federal estimator on, I'm going to put in the link, studentaid.gov. So if you're a high school junior right now, you can actually go into there, put in your 2020 tax information, and if you believe it'll be around the same amount for next year, it can tell you what you might possibly get for financial aid. So I would suggest to do that just so you can have a clue on how much you're going to receive from the federal aspect. So you know before you're looking at different colleges, so you know around what you're working with financially. But the FSA ID, yes, if you can do that early, do that. Do the ACT, SAT, look at colleges. So you can fill out scholarship applications. There are some for for juniors who haven't got to that point yet. So I would just look and see what's out there.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Yes, that's sort of what I was thinking too. Like those scholarship databases like fastweb.com.
Hmm.
They could also sign up and register for those scholarship databases. Ms. Collier, the students have access to a program called Naviance.
Mm.
We are going around right now, the counselors, several of us are on this call. We were able to last week meet with 125 students between the four of us, and we've been coming up with graduation plans. And so one of the things that we're talking to, especially juniors and seniors about, is Naviance. And they have access to do college searches on there. There are some career and interest inventories on that tool. We haven't really rolled out the curriculum a lot to the juniors, but we have spent some time on it with seniors already. But that's a tool that your student has access to right now.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, people. Well, we appreciate you for spending this evening with us. Diana, thank you so much. We're so thankful for your time tonight and for you giving us this presentation. As I mentioned before, we're going to post this recording, and we're also going to post the PowerPoint to our Google Classrooms and on our website. I'm Nikisha Brooks. I'm one of the school counselors. Michaela Polabel is on the call. She's also a school counselor. Demetria Brown joined us a while ago. She's also one of the school counselors. I'm trying to see if I see any other staff member. Lois Cheney Smith. She's been a great advocate and a help with us with our programming, with our school counseling programming and college and career programming. She's also on the call. But we want to thank you, community members and students, for joining us tonight. And we're here. If you need us, you have our email addresses and our contact information. So again, thanks everybody for coming tonight, and we will hope to see you soon. Good night.